Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Sir, I have had the chance to follow the intervention of several members, including that of the Honourable Minister Mentor, who in his speech said that this government, that means his government, has been in office for only 2 years so far, though I have to say it seems much longer since they made all those promises, and so long since many of the former government and their supporters were arrested, locked up, and now many of these cases dropped for lack of a shred of any evidence against them. And so long have we been waiting for so many of the election promises of this government to be fulfilled, that this budget seems another anticlimax from a government that has got through more ministers of finance than the present half-timer has had to endure court appearances over the Medpoint case. It has really seemed so long that this unraveling alliance has just about survived despite its continual hemorrhaging of adherents that I suppose the Honourable Minister Mentor was claiming it was still too early to expect results from this government. That is, if any of us any longer expects it to deliver on any of its promises. May I also remind the Honourable Minister Mentor that we are in the 31st month of this government in power. And by now, this government has less time left in office than time it has spent in office. What is more worrisome, however, Deputy Speaker, sir, is that the trend is exactly the reverse of what was promised. Fulfillment of its promises seems to recede faster than time progresses with this government. And it is a real concern for those with any sense of justice and fair play on what was clearly a false prospectus that duped the electorate. And this half-baked budget is just another helping of more promises no one in their right mind can trust. For trust is the very substance in short supply with this regime. As a matter of fact, there has been a net deterioration of the economic situation since this government has taken office. Even after all the following presentations: number 1, achieving meaningful change; 2, Mauritius at the crossroad; 3, on achieving the second economic miracle and Vision 2030; 4, a new era of development; and 5, this present budget, rising to the challenge of our ambitions. I must say that the Honourable Minister of Finance has been consistent in his last 2 budget presentations, insofar as a radical change in transforming the budget exercise, in which one would traditionally expect the elaboration of major economic orientations, and God knows we need them, but instead we are being taken by his speech through an unrelated series of items, like a schoolboy's wish list for his birthday, that at times we were under the impression that the minister had lost his way in a maze of his own making. In this budget, there is nothing much on policy, nor on economic strategy, to reassure the population that we have even started on the meaningful change heralded in 2015, or have begun to cross that crossroads, or have begun to see the second economic miracle unfolding, or have even opened the door of that new era of development, or begun to rise from our knees to the new challenge of this government's ambition. Indeed, we only find that these long 31 months, this government's ambition are mounting on the miseries of credulities of the electorate they bamboozled to vote for them. Where is that feel-good factor? Where is the exit from the middle income trap? Where are all the promises they made before and after they were elected? This budget is nothing but an air pie, lacking in the substance we have the right to expect from the ambitious promises of the manifesto and every budget the present regime has had the gall to offer. I was reading the micro-trottoir, Deputy Speaker, sir, conducted by one of the weekly newspapers during the weekend. Almost all of the people who were interviewed had negative sentiments, contrary to more balanced feedback in the past. Some people have even expressed doubt about the bien fondé of these projects and whether they were questioning whether they were realizable or not. Another question being asked is, what impact will this budget have on the daily lives of the Mauritian family already suffering from the high cost of living? And if this government needs an aveu de chèque, this is one. Before I move on to this budget, I would like to touch on the issue of poverty, which the Honourable Minister Mentor said did not happen with this government. Now, whilst the poor may be with us always under this government, the number of poor people has increased and is continuing to increase while ministers are going around telling them that this is not the case, and MPs. I take my own constituency. How many people have lost their jobs under this government? Government jobs, be it at the Municipal Council, Road Development Authority, and other departments, and thus depriving them of their livelihoods today. How many people who were employed by the BAI group are now jobless? How many super cash pack gold victims in my own constituency are still waiting for their sweat money? Salim Muti said it 4 days ago, and I quote from him, Pravin Jagnat in Kuyon Jimun, Limalonet, end of quotation. In referring to the undertaking he had with them before leaving for India. How many marchands ambulants of Port Louis are now having such a hard time to survive? I do not say that there was no need to make load. There was one, as the government calls it. But what is the plan B for them? Like the one the Labour Party government had for the marchands ambulants before the general elections. Furthermore, there is a sentiment de deux poids, deux mesures when marchands ambulants in the constituency of the Honourable Minister of Local Government, Honourable Jagru, was and is able to continue selling. The more so after he had intervened at the level of the police who wanted to prevent the marchand from operating. And yet, the police are supposed to be independent. Pull the other leg. Talking about the Honourable Minister of Local Government, Honourable Jagru, I've listened to him yesterday and before as well. He is one of the most vociferous critics of the Labour Party in this House. Even from his very own maiden speech in Parliament, and if you would allow me, Deputy Speaker, sir, on 26 February 2015, and I'll quote, he said, Madam Speaker, I wish to mention today that during the last electoral campaign, Dr. Navin Chandra Ramgulam had got the guts to treat l'Alliance Les Peuples as camion saleté. Let me remind him that this camion salte with our driver, Sir Anirudh Jagnat, has been able to elect 51 MPs. End of quotation. That was in 2015. Today, Deputy Speaker, sir, I challenge the alliance sitting across there to go and ask the people out there what they think of this government. If they really believe in real democracy, don't do that with an opinion poll per se. Go to the country and see what votes you get in the election boxes. Deputy Speaker, sir, the Honorable Gayan yesterday said, if you can't take the heat, then you cannot stay in the kitchen. La cuisine. Now, it seems that la cuisine is very important for this government. But, combien la cuisine malhérée finira de rouler avec sa gouvernement-là? Is a question that comes to the lips. Not able to count. Go.
Allow the honourable member.
It seems to me is a. I invite you, Honourable Gayan. I invite you.
Honourable members, allow the honourable member to make his speech.
Is a question that comes to the lips of many people since the last general elections. I think this government will go down history lane as gouvernement la cuisine. Simply because that very cuisine, or rather those who are in it, are responsible for our country's downfall. Who has not heard the famous recordings of the conversation between Sattar Haji Abdullah and Daoud Rawat in the wake of the collapse of the BAI group? The same disease company that is suing the government of Mauritius for $1 million US, billion US dollars, 37 billion rupees. Deputy Speaker, sir, this year's budget also presented some serious issues insofar as long-term and medium planning is concerned. Planning is still being done in a fragmented and dispersed manner. This results in lack of proper coordination, inadequate policy and project analysis, and coherence in the elaboration of an overall macroeconomic development framework, and this leads to a slowdown in the implementation and execution as evidenced by the percentage of capital spending yearly. Even for this year itself, on account of the absence of an efficient and effective monitoring system. I had listened to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition just after the budget exercise, and he said that last year, three-quarters of the measures were not implemented, and that it's going to be the same this year. Now, more broken promises. How long before the whole country will cry, enough is enough? Deputy Speaker, sir, some time ago the World Bank expressed concerns on the absence of planning in our budgetary framework. And this is still evident. I said it before and I'm saying it again today. There is now a strategic policy and planning department at the Prime Minister's office with a view to charting out a well-defined direction and vision, and last month in this very House we voted additional funds for this department. And I had even questioned the Honourable Prime Minister on that vote item. I hope that this office, together with the proposed Economic Development Board and the National Economic and Social Council, will fill the much-needed evident void made by the abandonment of the program-based budgeting system by this government in its first year in office. I believe the scrapping of the PBB was yet, again, in the spirit of nettoyer. the mandate that this government claims it was given by the people of Mauritius. Nettoyer, that's what was on the lips of everybody. But by the way, the word nettoyer is very seldom used these days by members on the other side of the House. The last person I heard using this word was from my constituency MP, Honorable Robina Jadu-John-Bacchus, who had said in an interview last month on Inside News, she said, "Comme vous connaissez, le gouvernement fait le mandat pour nettoyer." Nettoyer. Where has all this so-called nettoyer lead us today? Talking about nettoyer, I could not possibly refrain from thinking on how long a list of scandals we have before us today. I think the Honorable Amos had reminded us yesterday. He had done an exercise in 1 minute, but time lapsed. He could not finish the list. Okay, nettoyer version Le Peuple has led us to 5 billion of damages now payable to the STC. And there is more to come. Yes. Payable by the STC to Betamax. 5 billion rupees. Now, what could we have done with 5 billion rupees? This is half the price of the SSR International Airport. Now, yesterday the Honorable Jagru was talking about cracks in the building of the Flag Fire Station. And I'm sure by now that he has become minister, he must be knowing that engineers are responsible for supervision and not ministers. Now, regarding that airport, I can refer the House to PQ B583 of 2015 of Honorable Mahomed Jagru on the airport. And one of the supplementary questions is, being given that we have heard from the acting Prime Minister that the repair works at the airport will be done without any extra cost, can we know whether the materials used are worth the price we paid for? That was a question from the Honorable Jagru. Here we are in 2015. Members of this government were asking questions on petty repair works at no cost to the government on this flagship structure of Mauritius, when we are now being required to pay damages to the tune of half the price of that same airport. Which is which? Deputy Speaker, sir, I have chosen the word flagship because the SSR International Airport has recently figured on travel and lifestyle site Twinkle magazine as one of the most beautiful airports in this world. What we need now is a government able to attract new investors through its doors. What we don't need is more trips by the Honorable Prime Minister, flying off from this beautiful airport and coming back with more depth, weighing us down. For Deputy Speaker, sir, it is the depth level that is on everybody's mind in this country today. 188,000 in December 2000 was the depth per head per capita of population. And today, if I quote from the figures of the Honorable Leader of the Opposition, and I'm sure he knows what he's talking about, he has been Minister of Finance in the recent past. Today it is 233,000 per capita. Now, based on these figures of the Leader of the Opposition, and without counting the line of credit from India, our national debt has risen by 24% in 2.5 years. 24% increase in debt level in 2.5 years, Deputy Speaker, sir. Now, in his book, Deputy Speaker, sir, The Rise and Fall of Nations, author Ruchir Sharma, one of Bloomberg's 50 most influential people of 2015, and foreign policy top global thinker of 2012, reminded us how the clearest signal of coming of financial trouble comes from the pace of increase of depth. Size matters, but pace matters more. And he substantiated further by giving the example of Thailand in the late 1990s. Thailand, the debt level there was increasing significantly faster than the economy for a sustained period of time. And we all know what happened to Thailand during that time. So I summon the people on the other side of the House to read this, because we are playing with the future of our country. Deputy Speaker, sir, who was not shocked to hear what the Honourable Prime Minister and Minister of Finance said in his press conference on his return from India 3 weeks ago? He said he had found a unique way in borrowing money from India through a special purpose vehicle at the State Bank of Mauritius, without this amount being counted as public debt, and that this warrants that this government, his government, be issued a copyright status on this. Here we are. This government is trying to outsmart IMF norms and yet boasting about it. And with a 4-year grace period, he will just pass on that debt to the next government and not to be taken on his own shoulders at all. But the chickens will come to the roost. The electorate has a longer memory than he thinks. As regards that SPV, what lessons are we imparting to the public service and the private sector, already themselves so heavily indebted? Now, Deputy Speaker, sir, 24% in increase in debt level in 2.5 years. What did we get in return? Did we get an airport like the one the Labour Party has left as landmark of its legacy? No. Instead, we have a dead and buried heritage city. Did we have a first-class public hospital like the G2 hospital in my constituency at the cost of 2.3 billion rupees, half the Betamax damages? No. This government has paid 144 million rupees for the MedPoint clinic, and yet has to make use of it. Did we get a mighty dam like the Bagatel Dam, or did the government rehabilitate any water treatment plants? No. We are still awaiting better supply of water in many parts of the island, including my own constituency, notwithstanding heavy investment made at the Pine treatment plant by the Labour Party, which was commissioned in 2015 under this regime. We are still waiting that enhanced water supply there. Did we have useful highways and bypasses like the one built by the Labour Party-led government? No. This investment is investing 600 million rupees on a highway that passes nearby the airport, near the airport smart city project, which appears to be in trouble. Ever since La Guerre Intestinale has begun, I had the chance to ask questions on this in Parliament, between the architect and the promoter. The architect is accusing the promoter of not paying him, and the promoter is accusing the architect from having been barred in his own country to practice as architect. Now, let me come to a little bit about social housing, because it was debated this morning in the PNQ. Well, I had the chance to discuss with the Honourable Minister of Housing and Land for the squatters of Trang Bao, who has now been relocated to Puerto Sap. And I must thank him for that. He did the needful almost immediately. But having said that, where are all the promises made by this government? What is a fact, and it is undeniable today, that all those housing units that have so far been delivered by this government have actually been initiated by the Labour Party-led government. I'm here talking about 1,000 housing units, the construction of which started in 2014 and were scheduled to be handed over in 2015. New housing units of 2 rooms, plus kitchen, plus bathroom, plus WC, designed for extension, and which can also accommodate an additional floor on 9 sites, namely Camp Ichi, Kat Koko, Camp de Masque, Chebel, Beaubois, Pointe-aux-Sables, Sébastopol, Mar d'Albert, and Mongo. Now, for the sake of decency, one must recognize and not criticizing during inauguration ceremonies the former regime. Because when your cupboard is empty and it is bare and you have to rely on your neighbors, don't criticize them. One note on the environment and sustainable development. The problem there is, notwithstanding the few measures contained in this budget exercise, there remains the fact that this ministry is perceived as being a ministère bouche-trou of this government. The ministry has had 3 ministers since the last general elections of 2014. Honorable Dayal, Honorable Wong, and now Honorable Sinatambu. 3 ministers in 2 years for the Ministry of Environment. That makes a minister in every 8 months, also, approximately. The current one also holds the portfolio of Ministry of Social Security and National Solidarity. One of the 3 biggest ministries in this country. The other 2 being Ministry of Education and Ministry of Health, simply because their client base is very large. It's a very busy ministry. I've worked at that ministry before. Well, so far I've seen that the Honorable Sinatambu has recently launched the Environmental Foundation of Her Highness Princess Camilla de Bourbon, who is here to do some business as well. I'm quoting from her own statement. Now, is this Environment Foundation going to solve our environmental problems? The Honorable Henri talked about COP23 in Bonn later this year. Can I ask the Honorable Minister, even symbolically, what action has he taken as regards the US decision to pull out of the COP21 Paris Agreement on Climate Change? We are one of the, at least we could have written a letter of protest because we are one of the, have you?
Please address yourself to the chair.
We could have done that because we are one of the 995 signatories. Mauritius emits only 0.001% of global CO2 emission, and the US is responsible for about 24%. Whereas we don't pollute, we are the receiving end insofar as damages are concerned. Now, what has become of the funds that were committed by the US for adaptation purposes for a country like us? I don't see anything in the budget. I don't see will the Environmental Foundation of Her Highness give us money for that? Now, there are some serious concerns that there, Deputy Speaker, sir. We need to make our voices heard more and more. I would like to touch on a few issues that concern my constituency number 2. I note that the government has made provision for wastewater management at several locations, but I have not seen water cut. There are a lot of problems because the whole system gets clogged and it really causes hardship to people. I had asked a question in Parliament yesterday and I'm still waiting for a written answer. Now, secondly, I hope the provision of 500 million rupees to local authorities for energy-efficient LED street lighting will also entail repairing the existing network at many locations. Port Louis is very dark by night, and Port Louis gets lighted up, as it should, only on Port Louis by light nights, once a year. I see provision has been made for the continuation of the compost bins, which was initiated under Maurice Durab. This is good. But what the people in my constituency are asking for are the poubelles, the bins, because those that were given to them many, many years ago have worn out or have been damaged. Sports complexes, I have a next PQ on that on next Tuesday. Furthermore, I see that this budget exercise makes provision for the funds for the purchase of 20 fire and rescue vehicles. Deputy Speaker, sir, like everybody else, I've watched how the blaze suddenly ripped off the 24-story Grenfell Tower in Latimer Road in London recently, yesterday, taking many lives of people who were trapped inside and injuring so many people. At its peak, and for several hours, it took 200 firefighters and hours to fight that blaze. Now, 24 floors is not very tall, Deputy Speaker, sir. It's just like our Bank of Mauritius, Mauritius Telecom, MCB, SBM, Air Mauritius type buildings. God forbid, and I do not wish any country to have this kind of trouble. I would advise the Honourable Minister to look beyond the cracks of the flak fire station and to ensure with his officers that the equipment that is being purchased under this budget meets the requirements of our new skyline, be it in terms of equipment or be it in terms of training that we are imparting to our firefighters. Because I said it again, God forbid, the last thing we would wish is for our country to be in a similar situation and we are not able to fight that fire. On an ending note, Deputy Speaker, sir, what we need is not a half-baked budget from a part-time Minister of Finance, but a robust effort that will put this country back on a path for sustainable development without handouts from our friends from India who have graver problems of their own. What we need, Deputy Speaker, sir, is firstly a budget based on balanced fiscal policy and not one where we are clearly living beyond our means. Secondly, a budget that is based on real transparency about our growing debt and not one faking the figures by removing chunks of our foreign debt off the books. Indeed, the Financial Secretary, that other mentor, has surprised many for allowing such dodgy devices. And he is now perpetrating the subterfuge noir. This used to be called creative accounting. Now it is a little more than fiscal fraud. Moreover, Deputy Speaker, sir, we need a budget which incorporates strategic economic planning, leading us to 2030 and beyond. This should embrace a proper valuation of our environmental assets, which are in danger of being frittered away as this government seems intent on spreading infrastructure in concrete from shore to shore, even on the fragile ecosystem of Agaliga. Above all, we need a budget that seriously captures our responsibilities under the Paris Accord, the 2005 UN SIDS Mauritius Strategy, and our commitments from Samoa UN SIDS Conference of 2014. For this, we need a fully costed long-term program and not the mishmash we are being offered here. We urgently need a new approach to financial management and planning, not just for now, for the brief further lifetime of this government so exhausted of vision, but for the future, for his children, for our children, and for generations to come. Deputy Speaker, sir, if that package is too much to ask from this past-time Minister of Finance, even with the help of all his team, I call on him to move over, to dissolve this assembly, and to allow a more skilled and experienced government to move in with a full-time Minister of Finance who is up to the job without asking for time off to do his homework and then coming back with this botched package. I thank you for your attention.